A first watch, what does that really mean? It's a different concept for a lot of different people. For me, a first watch happened to be an heirloom, but it doesn't change the fact that it informed my entire collecting strategy, what my watch collection looks like. What I have with me today is something I consider to be a quintessential first watch. It's simple, it's steel, it has just enough visual interest, and best of all, it's 40 millimeters in size. Oh, and by the way, it's a Tag Heuer. Tag Heuer was the watch of the 80s and 90s. As much as we would love to believe that the streets were littered with people wearing vintage Rolex divers, they were wearing tags. These were people's everyday watch because they came in at an accessible price point that made them appealing. This is the Tag Heuer Aquaracer 200. It's called the Outdoors collection by the brand, but really it's the Aquaracer that you know, just in a new 40 millimeter size. And that really goes a lot longer way than you'd think it would for a watch. I mean, historically, these watches in recent memory have been 43 millimeters. For someone like me with about a 6 1/3 inch wrist, that's enormous. 40 millimeters is kind of a sweet spot size, and I think that a watch like this appeals to a broad range of watch buyers. I thought a good way to approach this review is breaking down 3 categories of buyers or individuals and how they might look at a watch like this. And I think the best 3 categories are the novice collector, the enthusiast collector, and the super collector. Right? I am the novice collector. So what is it that I'm looking for in a watch? Well, solid build quality, reputable brand, and a watch that's gonna last. I mean, you look at a watch like the 40 millimeter Aquaracer and you have a well-known brand name. Everybody knows Tag. And a lot of the super collectors or the people who have been in this sort of watch hobby for a long time, they can probably trace their watch history to a Tag Heuer. With a steel bracelet, a steel bezel, it flies under the radar. You can kind of do anything you want with it. At 200 meters water resistance, you can swim with it. You don't have to worry about it getting wet. I mean, a no-hassle watch, an automatic winding watch, which means your wrist moving will wind the watch for you. You just don't have to worry about it ever. And isn't that what you want in a first watch? A watch you don't have to think about? It kind of obviates the need to have more than one watch because it straddles the line between toolish or sporty and a little bit more fancy, a little bit more formal. And that's by virtue of the fact that it has polished center links on the dial, which means when you wear it with something like a flannel shirt, it'll dress down. When you wear it with a suit, it'll dress up. But of course this means something different to, let's say, an enthusiast collector or somebody who's kind of been in the watch world for a long time, someone who reads Hodinkee very often or someone who has a broader collection. So let's meet that person. So now I'm the enthusiast. And what am I looking for in a watch? While our novice collector might have a general understanding about what Tag Heuer means as a brand and what it means to purchase a Tag Heuer, the enthusiast has a more nuanced view of what that means and the historical context behind it. They understand that in the 80s and 90s, the Tag Heuer professional line sort of was the ruler of the realm. And I think as an enthusiast collector, you can respect the fact that Tag Heuer making this watch in a 40 millimeter package harkens back to those 80s and 90s watches, and it really means something. You look for things like thickness, and this really isn't very thick and it wears great on the wrist. You look behind the watch and you see, ooh, it has a solid case back. We love solid case backs. We're always talking about how much we wish tool watches had solid case backs. Well, this one has that. It has an amazing dial that kind of belies the pricing. You can put this in the light and just move it back and forth and watch how this sort of fume style blue gradient dial just does different things depending on how you turn it. They also respect the fact that Tag Heuer has gone the extra step to give this micro adjust capability. You can snap it out if you want to make it bigger, and you can snap it in if you want to make it smaller. A first watch can mean a lot of things. It can mean an everyday watch, and I think that's where this appeals to the enthusiast most. Because some of us might have a watch that we bought maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it might have a crown on the dial, and maybe it's appreciated so much in value that we just don't feel comfortable wearing it anymore. Well, how nice would it be to get a watch like this? The quintessential kind of tool watch that you can wear every single day and literally not have to think about it. Now, I'll add that there are a couple things that enthusiasts might look at and wonder, does this need to be here? And I'm of course talking about the date window. But let's really look at it. It's at 6 o'clock. It pretty much matches the outer edges of the dial, so it blends in very nicely and it's pretty unobtrusive. So if you're gonna put it anywhere, I think 6 o'clock is a really great place to start. What's interesting though, is that enthusiasts probably know that TAG Heuer also released a quartz version of this watch this year, right alongside this one. And that watch has no date window, which is very interesting to me because I think that more watch enthusiasts would prefer a non-date version of a watch and also not go and buy a quartz watch. So for TAG Heuer to have sort of put the date on the automatic and no date on the quartz, I find that to be a little bit interesting. And I think that there's something to be said about that, and we should keep a lookout in the future if maybe there's an update to this one, a no date update. All right, I'm the super collector now. The kind of person that I am is somebody who sees a new watch and tries to find value where nobody else sees it. And I think that as much as the TAG Heuer Aquaracer 40mm, even if it's a mouthful to say, as much as it appeals to the novice and the enthusiast, I think there's appeal for the super collector as well. And that's because it's a first. It's a first of the 40mm Aquaracers in the modern TAG Heuer collection. If you look at each component part of this watch, a steel bezel, an oyster-style bracelet with polished center links, a solid case back, a textured blue dial, it doesn't sound like an exciting concept, but when you look at it as a whole, there's a real design sensibility, a confidence in the design that really comes through. And for a super collector looking at this, they're going to understand that this is just a really well executed first watch concept. This is the first time that TAG Heuer is implementing a new engraving on its caseback, this compass engraving. And that's because the 40mm Aquaracer is also called the Outdoors. It's not a dive watch, it's a sports watch. It's supposed to be able to do anything. And the compass kind of reflects this outdoor sensibility. But for the collector, the first time for an engraving, just another little thing to pick up on when you're looking at something or looking at a new watch that other people might not be paying attention to. Now, do I see the John Goldbergers of the world, the Ben Climbers of the world rushing to their ADs to pick one of these watches up? Probably not, though I won't judge them if they do. But if they pass you wearing this on the street, I bet you're gonna get a second look. All right, that feels much better. I didn't expect to be changing my clothes that many times today, but I know that we walked through 3 archetypes that really were kind of caricatures of individuals or collector types that might look at a watch like this and how they might look at it. But I pull from each one of those in a different way, ways that speak to me. And when I think about buying a watch for the first time, I often think, what if it was my first and only watch? So I can always empathize and relate to the novice. I kind of consider myself an enthusiast, so the minutia, the little details, the 40mm sizing of the watch, that appeals to me, especially from a brand like TAG Heuer. And the super collector, well, I love that it's the first modern 40mm Aquaracer. As a collectible item at a great price point, that's also extremely appealing. And all of those things together, pulling from each caricature, each archetype, makes for a really, really interesting watch. So who's this watch for? Well, I think it's for the novice and the enthusiast alike, and you can throw the super collector right into the mix. The style, the simplicity, the build quality, they're all kind of pitch perfect, so nobody has to compromise.